Hello, my name is Zirolli Logan, and this is my presentation on my research of activism and social justice in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, like many other cities across the United States, struggles with a variety of social justice issues, some of which include housing injustice, equitable transit in neighborhoods, education inequality, racial inequality, economic inequality, and criminal justice and policing. Most issues are interconnected by a gap in social and economic equity. I'm going to go into detail on a few of those issues here. Los Angeles was found to have the 7th highest level of income inequality in the country, and one report states that 18.4% of locals live below the poverty line. There are also large ethnic and racial differences in wealth in the area. For example, one study estimated that the typical U.S.-born Black or Mexican family has just 1% of the wealth of a typical white family in Los Angeles, or 1 cent for every dollar of wealth held by the average white family in the metro area. A further example is the median value of liquid assets, those assets that can quickly be converted to cash. For Mexicans and other Latinos is striking, $0 and only $7 respectively, while the median value of liquid assets for the white households is $110,000. This not only implies financial hardship in the long term, but it also makes families particularly vulnerable to short-term financial disruption, the report states. One cause for the increasing gap between the poor and wealthy is the decline of middle-wage jobs. Meanwhile, low and high-wage jobs have increased. We saw that the economic disparities are often tied to race. African Americans are 8% of the LA population, but they are 42% of the homeless population. Why is this? A history of discrimination in housing restricted Black families to certain neighborhoods in LA. Then through the practice of redlining, which is when real estate agents and lenders mark certain neighborhoods as undesirable for investment, residents were prevented from obtaining home loans. By the 1970s, 75% of LA's Black population was concentrated in just 24 neighborhoods in South LA. When manufacturing jobs declined in the 1980s, Black unemployment almost doubled. Drugs and gangs in the area increased, and much of the population either left or were incarcerated. Latinos started moving to the area in the 90s, and the cost of living rose. South LA was then majority Latino, and the Black residents were among the poorest. The Great Recession hit them hard, and the recovery offered them little. Now about 1/3 of South LA's Black residents live in poverty. The creation of these poor Black neighborhoods led to unequal access to resources. The rise of drugs and crime and deep-rooted racism increased police violence, and communities of color often bear the brunt of discriminatory policies. Here's a graphic showing the moving and decrease of Black communities from 1970 to 2017. The creation of neighborhoods of crime and poverty led to further issues for its residents. There is a lack of investment in traffic safety measures like streetlights, crosswalks, and sidewalks, and an overinvestment in roads meant for non-residents to quickly pass through these neighborhoods. This increases the danger for pedestrians and cyclists in the area. Because of this, Black people were more than twice as likely for each mile walked to be struck and killed by a vehicle than white pedestrians, and 4.5 times higher for Black cyclists than white cyclists. And for Hispanic walkers and bikers, the death rates were 1.5 and 1.7 times as high, respectively, as those for white walkers and bikers. Schools are, of course, organized by neighborhoods and districts, so it only makes sense that these same neighborhoods that were redlined, discriminated against, filled with crime and poverty, and denied resources have schools that have many of the same issues. Schools in these neighborhoods are underfunded, overcrowded, and lack resources like new technologies, counselors, nurses, social workers, and highly qualified teachers. In a study that looked at 14 different school districts in LA County, Black students were twice as likely to experience homelessness than other racial groups. In 10 of the 14 districts, Black students and their families were twice as likely to live below the federal poverty line. Issues such as lack of health care, poor neighborhoods, and living conditions and poverty have contributed to the number of special needs students, and Black students with learning disabilities are 2 to 10 times more likely to be suspended than the overall county suspension rate. All of these previous issues tie back to the issue of housing. As we discussed before, there is a history of redlining in LA that have created these poverty-filled neighborhoods. Between that and the current housing crisis of rising rents and house prices, residents feel trapped in their current circumstances. Between 2000 and 2021, home values have tripled. As of March 2021, the typical home value was $775,000, which is more than double that of New York and Florida and triple that of Texas. Rents in the area are also very high, with the median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment costing $3,000. The housing crisis has affected Americans all over the country, with residents of Los Angeles no exception. Affordability is, of course, a major issue for many people. Rent was causing most people to allocate over 30% of their income to rent each month before the pandemic, and the average nationwide rent has only increased since then. Wages have not increased at nearly the level that rental costs have, with rent increasing 4 times faster than wages. Housing costs are the leading cause of inflation. Going back to the issue of racial injustice, gentrification continues to be an issue as Black and Latino households are often priced out of their homes as rental and mortgage rates rise. Gentrification, discrimination, lack of affordable housing, mental illness, and substance abuse has contributed to the homelessness in the area. LA County has over 69,000 homeless people, the majority of which are Black. As people are priced out of their homes, they often find themselves with no other option than to live on the streets. And the city does not offer enough resources to provide solutions to the homeless. Additionally, there are even issues of discrimination towards Section 8 subsidized housing voucher recipients so that they still cannot acquire housing, and people of color are still systematically denied opportunities for homeownership. All of the issues we've discussed seem to be involved in a cycle of social justice issues that make it extremely hard for people to rise from. Here's a graphic showing the number of homeless persons in LA County. And here's a graph showing the homelessness in California compared to other U.S. states and how it has continued to rise over the past several years. Luckily, there are some organizations in the area who are bringing light to these issues and actively working to tackle them. Social Justice Partners LA are committed to tackling underlying issues perpetuating racial, economic, and social injustices in LA. Liberty Hill funds grassroots organizing, trains leaders, and powers change through campaigns. Their priorities include racial justice, LGBTQ and gender justice, environmental and climate justice, and economic and housing justice. Los Angeles Data Justice Hub curates data sets related to various social justice issues, including policing and incarceration, economics, education, climate change, and more. Thank you for watching my presentation.